Good evening, everyone, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this webinar for the Sociology and Education programs at Teachers College. I think many of you may have just uh, been party to a brief introduction to the Education Policy and Social Analysis Department led by Professor Luis Huerta and its Assistant Director of Admissions, David Estrella. This is a follow-on. There are 5 of these breakout rooms going on simultaneously, one for each of the 5 programs in the department. And today I'm joined by Professor Na Lor, who's in the Sociology and Education program faculty, and Anurag Sharma, who's a PhD student, Sean Saunders, a master's student, Sam Grobert, a master's student, and Emily Rios, a master's student. And you'll have a chance to hear from them a bit later on in the presentation. I don't know whether the chat function is working. If it is, feel free to say hello in the chat and indicate where you're from, where you're zooming in from. Some of us are New York based, but you could be from anywhere. And we're just happy to see you all. This next slide indicates some of the people who are on the Zoom call from the program. The only person who we're not seeing right now is Aidan Hill, who's the program manager. And I want to start by talking about the program, its history, and why we think sociology is a good lens for studying education. And throughout, I think we won't be able to keep up with questions in the chat in real time, but if you do have questions along the way, do put them in there. We'll be able to come back and address them a bit later in our session. So the program in Sociology and Education at Teachers College has been in operation for nearly a century. The very first course on the sociology of education in the US was taught at Teachers College in the first decade of the 20th century. And it's a program that has a storied tradition. And the reason that programs like ours exist is because the leadership of Teachers College felt that it was important to study education from the lenses of different academic disciplines, which is why our program is one of several in our department that uses a discipline to look at education. The other disciplines that we look at education through in our department are history, economics, and political science. There are other programs at Teachers College that use additional disciplinary lenses, such as the Philosophy of Education program in the Arts and Humanities department, and the Anthropology and Education program in the Department of International and Transcultural Studies. And there's lots and lots of psychologists who study education at Teachers College. But the reason we think sociology is so important is that education is a social process. And we've all gone through school, we've all had school experiences, some satisfying, some perhaps not satisfying. And education is a major social institution that structures people's life experiences and life chances. So we want to use sociology and its tools to understand how education works and what we can learn about how to make it better by using disciplinary knowledge. On the slide, you'll see the phrase, the sociological imagination. And this is a term that's the title of a book written by C. Wright Mills, who was a Columbia sociologist, written in the late 50s. And the idea of the sociological imagination is to join individual lives and experiences to society and to historical events. So it's really the intersection of history and biography as a means of providing individuals with the tools to be able to make sense of their own experiences, and by making sense of them, perhaps act on them to improve them. So the idea of the sociological imagination is it's imaginative, but it's also imagining perhaps a better future and using sociology as a means for doing that. And the sociological imagination draws our attention to how people's lives evolve and unfold in time and place. The role of history, the role of culture, the role of politics, the role of social institutions, all as context for understanding people's experiences in school settings, both formal and informal. This slide introduces the core faculty in the program, and they are Professor Na Lor, who's on our call today, you'll see what she's listed as teaching this academic year, this fall, courses in qualitative methods and the sociology of higher education. I'm in the middle, and I'm teaching courses on the sociology of schools and the sociology of the life course this term. And I'll be teaching a course on survey research methods in the spring. And Professor Carolyn Reel, who is teaching two courses in the spring, the sociology of organizations and the logic and design of research. We benefit from a great cast of part-time faculty. And so you'll see 3 slides now of part-time faculty who are teaching for us this current academic year. Pavitra Nagarajan, all of them have day jobs. And Pavitra's day job is with a research center at the City University of New York Graduate Center. And this spring, she'll be teaching qualitative methods. Eleni Natsiapoulou, whose day job is as a high school Greek teacher and dean at a high school in New York City. And she's teaching the sociology of education and classical social theory this fall, and the sociology of education and contemporary social theory in the spring. Joseph Nelson, whose day job is a tenured associate professor of African American Studies and Education at Swarthmore College, who is teaching sociology of education this fall and a course on race, gender, and education in the spring. And Andrea Kim, who is a doctoral student, who is one of 2 students leading a course that prepares students at the master's level to draft and execute integrative projects that are a culminating experience for their time in the program. We also have on our adjunct faculty, Basil Smikle, who you may see on MSNBC and other media because he's a longstanding political commentator, former chair of the New York State Democratic Party, and currently directs a public policy program at Columbia's School of Professional Studies, who's teaching education and public policy this semester. Joan Stamler, who is teaching evaluation of educational and social programs this semester and is most recently the director of research for Turnaround for Children, a nonprofit that engages in school improvement. Selena Cardona, who is a doctoral student, who along with Andrea Kim is instructing the Master's Integrative Project course. And Jose Vilson, who is a recently minted PhD from our program, which means he's looking for work. He just graduated in August. And he'll be teaching a course on the sociology of teaching and learning in the spring, which is right up his alley because his dissertation involved teacher professionalism, and he is a renowned teacher activist. And then finally, Cami Tulukian is a doctoral student who this fall is teaching a course in the sociology of urban education. So that's a very brief overview of the faculty who are teaching in the program this year. Many of them will also be teaching in the program in the coming years, but we wanted to share them with you. They're real people. They're terrific. They're great instructors. Most of them have a lot of experience as classroom teachers. I want to tell you a bit about the hallmarks of the Sociology and Education program at Teachers College, and we list 4 of them on this slide. And the 4 that we list are the use of a sociological lens to understand the behavior of educational systems. And we think of the education system as having multiple levels. We actually have a course on the sociology of education systems. We have courses on the sociology of schools. and the sociology of classrooms. And sociology as a tool can help us understand how educational systems work. And that's something that flows through all of our programs and all of our curricula. We also take special care to ensure that our students get good training in research methods. There are two reasons for this. One is it's really important to be a competent consumer of research to be able to make sense of all that's going on in the world of education. Second, we know from experience that having technical skills in research is often a very marketable skill. Many of our former students wind up gaining jobs solely on the basis or largely on the basis of having developed technical research skills in the courses they take while in our program. We also have an intrinsic connection to the study of education policy. Not surprising for a program that's situated in an education policy and social analysis department, but we want to think about education policy as broadly as we can, and many of our students will elect a policy concentration, which we'll be saying a little bit more about later in this presentation. And then finally, we have an overarching commitment to addressing educational inequality. There's very little question that there are unequal opportunities for educational success around the world and in the US in particular. And our concern in our program is helping students understand the nature of educational inequality, the mechanisms by which it is produced, and ways of disrupting those mechanisms to create a more equitable and just world, which is very consistent with the Teachers College overall mission. I'm going to briefly describe the requirements for our master's programs. And we have two master's programs, a Master of Arts and a Master of Education, but this is specifically about the Master of Arts program. And there are four basic sets of requirements. Foundational coursework in the social analysis of education, which includes coursework in sociology of education, social theory, and the domains of education and social inequality, education and social organization, and education and social change. Coursework and research methods, and we ensure that our master's students have access to both introductory quantitative and qualitative methods, quantitative being the use of numbers and qualitative being the use of texts, as well as at least one course that is an advanced methods course. Electives or concentration, and students sometimes elect the concentration in policy, but alternatively, they may elect courses that are simply of interest and around the college. And every semester, we're able to put together a really interesting set of elective courses available for students. And then finally, a culminating experience. And the culminating experience takes one of two forms. It can be either a master's comprehensive examination that is largely self-directed, a 2-week take-home exam where students develop a set of questions based on the courses they've taken, the experiences they've had, and they work with their advisors to develop a set of questions that they can respond to. Or alternatively, a master's integrative project, which is a year-long research project in which students enroll in the course that's taught by the pair of doctoral students and develop an independent research project that they conceptualize, design, collect data, and write up, culminating in a public presentation at the end of the school year, which is always one of the highlights of our year at the college. So typically at the end of April, early May, presentations of the master's integrative projects. There are some additional requirements for the other degree programs. The Master of Education is a 60-point program. Many of our students in the Master of Education program come in already with a Master of Arts, and oftentimes some of the coursework undertaken in an MA program can count towards the requirements for the Master of Education. which also has a particular additional quantitative research course as part of the responsibilities for students. And there's space in the Master of Education for a lot more elective study for a concentration or specialization. The PhD program is really a kind of different animal. It's a 75-point program. It too allows students to sometimes count prior graduate coursework towards the requirements for the degree. And along with the MA requirements, there's additional coursework in social theory, research design and methods, graduate level seminars. Our doctoral students often take courses in the sociology department at Columbia University or in the inter-university doctoral consortium, which allows teachers college students to take courses at neighboring institutions in the metro area. New York University, the City University of New York Graduate Center, the New School. We even have had a student in memory having taken a course at Princeton through the inter-university doctoral consortium. And a dissertation, which is certainly not least, even though it's last on this list, because a dissertation is a very serious multi-year project that students engage with under the direction of a dissertation sponsor and a dissertation committee. I mentioned that there's an optional policy concentration, and the policy concentration has 4 components: a course on foundational studies in education policy, which most commonly is a course on the history of U.S. education policy, a course on the craft of policy analysis, and there's several such courses that students are able to choose among, a course on the evaluation of educational and social programs, and a topical course that applies tools of policy analysis to a particular topic. And I've got a list on the next slide of some examples of topical courses in that students can choose among. It changes every semester, but you can get a sense from this list of the kinds of courses that students are able to choose among that bear on the study of policy in education. And it's a lot. I mean, we've got courses that range from educational development policies in China to Latinos in urban schools, to human rights education, to curriculum and teaching policy, and more. This is just a subset of the courses that are made available across the college for students to be able to elect this policy concentration. I want to show you the courses that are being taught this semester in our program. And this, of course, is just a subset of the courses that our students take. But among the courses in our program are the ones that are listed here on this slide. Students in our program are able to take other courses in the EPSA department, including courses in the Ed Policy program, the Economics of Education program, History of Education, and Politics in Education, as well as courses in other departments at TC, such as the Department of Curriculum and Teaching, the Department of Human Development, the Department of International and Transcultural Studies, the Department of Organization and Leadership. We also have this list of courses coming up in the spring. Now, for those of you who have already started to explore courses, the warning I have to give you is that we discovered that the spring 2025 course schedule somehow has some errors in it. They supposedly will be fixed by tomorrow, but if you see courses currently on that schedule that don't look familiar, it's because they were probably taught last spring and not this spring, and they somehow got carried along kind of automatically, not intentionally. But these are the courses in the program that will be offered this coming spring. And we list these, I think, largely to reassure you that we have a robust schedule of courses. I have a friend who's fond of saying about courses in the graduate school, there's what's on the menu and there's what's actually in the kitchen. Because things can show up on the menu that they're not actually in the kitchen. These are all the courses that are in the kitchen. These are things that we are actually offering. Course catalog lists other courses, and many of these courses are taught on a every other year basis so that we're able to offer more courses over the course of a student's experience in the program than is simply reflected. The department also has two really important policy and practice related institutes. The first one is a program signature course, the Federal Policy Institute, which since its inception has been taught by Professor Sharon Lynn Kagan, who is one of the world's leading early childhood education policy experts. And Lynn advises governors and members of Congress, as well as officials around the world. And each January, she takes a team of about 20, 25 students to Washington, D.C. for the Federal Policy Institute, where she structures meetings for the Policy Institute students to meet with congressional staffers, representatives of membership organizations like the National Governors Association or the National Conference of State Legislatures. And in addition, the opportunity to meet with TC alumni who are working in Washington in various capacities. We have a number of department alumni working in the U.S. Education Department, as well as working for a number of the nonprofit organizations that engage in politics, advocacy, and research. The second policy and practice related initiative associated with the department is the Center for Public Research and Leadership at Columbia's Law School. And it's possible for students to enroll in a course that's called Systemic Improvement in Public Education, where teams of students who are brought together from various academic backgrounds, law students, business students, TC students, occasionally social work school students, are convened under the direction of managers to carry out consulting projects that are authentic projects. CPRL, as the acronym goes, has contracts with many organizations to do research projects for them. And teams of researchers who are enrolled in the class have the opportunity to work with the funders, understand what problems are important to them, figure out strategies for collecting data and writing reports that address the problems that they're concerned about, and then making presentations of them. It's a very intensive experience. Students typically have to sign up for 6 to 9 credits in the semester in which they enroll, but the students who choose to do that often find it very gratifying. So I want to tell you a little bit about what our master's graduates do. And to do that, I rely heavily on LinkedIn as a way of sort of keeping track of our graduates and staying in touch with them. And this next slide shows what I've learned about what our graduates do. About 20% of them typically go on to doctoral study, whether at Teachers College or elsewhere. And we have had doctoral students in sociology and in education at various schools around the US. Many of our graduates wind up working as research or policy analysts, either for nonprofit organizations, state or local departments of education, advocacy groups. Some graduates wind up as program administrators or directors, either in education units within school districts or in social service organizations. And we do have some graduates who came to us as recent classroom teachers who stepped away from the classroom to come to graduate school. Some of them discover they really miss the classroom, really miss working with kids directly, and return to the classroom. This next slide shows precisely, as precise as I can make it, what our most recent class of graduates, those who graduated this past spring, what they are doing. And you'll see, as roughly the proportions I suggested, about 5 of them are currently PhD students, either at Teachers College or at other schools such as Johns Hopkins or the University of Maryland. We have people working in administrative positions for research organizations. We have some working directly in schools. We actually don't have any who are describing themselves as classroom teachers. at the moment among this list, but this is the most recent group that I was able to pull information from to be able to tell you a bit about today. So this next slide presents Professor Na Lor, who's here. So I'm going to invite her to say a few words. Na, would you like me to stop sharing, or does it matter to you?
Oh, no, you can keep sharing. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Welcome. So happy to be here with you. So if it's okay, I'm just going to talk a little bit about my research. So my research focuses on higher education, kind of with an emphasis on teaching and learning and curriculum studies and student identity development. So both in the context of four-year institutions and two-year institutions. I want to say that I kind of started with an interest in students of color, but it's kind of shifted a bit to white students, in part because a couple of my active projects look at ethnic studies, both ethnic studies, policy making and policy implementation. So, as you probably know, right? So many colleges and universities require ethnic studies as part of the core college curriculum. But when we think about its intent and its transference from institutions over on the West Coast to places that are more historically white institutions, I'm interested in kind of exploring how students navigate those spaces, both students of color and white students, although there's somewhat different implications for each, right? So for students of color, it's kind of more of what is a culture-based education? How does that shape and influence their trajectories? For white students, it's more of what are effective pedagogical tools to help facilitate what people call kind of critical consciousness raising, right? So critical reflection, critical understanding and awareness, and then eventually critical action, right? Oftentimes, I'm kind of thinking about things from a historical material approach. We're thinking about how participation activity kind of in turn shapes what we think and how we, act and interact with people in the real world. And a lot of times, I'm also employing mixed methods. So survey research, in-depth interviews. I also tend to do what's called like social design experiment, which is just a fancy way of saying you implement and test new curricular or pedagogical tools, and then you assess it and evaluate it afterwards with, again, mixed methods. So I think that's a little bit about me. Yeah, happy to be here with you. And feel free to shoot me an email if you want to talk about my research or the program. I'm happy to chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Na. The next slide is me. I can figure out how to get to it. There it is. I've been at Teachers College, as you can tell from the gray and thinning hair, for a long time. I first came to TC in 1986, but I've been here continuously since 2000. And over the years, I've had a particular interest in the study of New York City schools. And a lot of my current research is situated in New York City, in particular looking at school and teacher accountability systems and the ways that teachers make sense of how they are held accountable for their performance, the annual evaluations that teachers in many school districts are rated on. And I'm analyzing a set of 141 interviews with New York City classroom teachers about their experiences with the evaluation system here in New York. That's part of a broader interest in the professionalization and deprofessionalization of teaching. Teaching has always had a kind of an ambiguous status. It's what's sometimes called a semi-profession. It doesn't have the full attributes of a profession in the way that medicine or law are seen as professions. And we've seen over the course of the last couple decades, both in the US and in Western Europe, what I'll call a kind of deprofessionalization of teaching, as teachers increasingly are held accountable by organizations that they work for. And so we see kind of organizational professionalism, where organizations are defining what counts as good practice and placing some restrictions on what teachers are actually able to do, less discretion than might have been thought to be the case in the past. There are lots of reasons for that, but it's something that I find very interesting and continue to be studying. I'm also interested in the distribution of resources across schools. Times in my career, that's meant looking at the distribution of dollars and why some schools get to spend more than other schools, the distribution of teachers, patterns of recruitment and retention of teachers across schools, and the unfortunate circumstance of the concentration of less experienced teachers in schools serving concentrations of kids in poverty. Thinking of curricula as a resource that can be unequally distributed across schools. And most recently, thinking about students as a resource. And one of my current projects is looking at the segregation of students across and within middle schools in New York City. In New York City, there are 32 community school districts, each of which has anywhere from 4 to 25 middle schools. And every district has its own process for matching students to the middle school. There's some use of lotteries, but there are some districts that historically have used academic screens to decide who can get into a particular school. And when schools are screened on the basis of academic qualities, you wind up with a different mix of students than if students are randomly assigned. So I've been trying to track over time changes over time in the segregation of white, black, African-American, white, black, Asian American, and Latino students, both within schools and across schools in these 32 community school districts. And Emily Rios, who you'll be hearing from a little bit later, is working with me as a research assistant and is an invaluable resource in helping make sense of the very complicated data. Finally, I also study the role of schooling in adult lives, and I'm teaching a course right now on the Sociology of the Life course. But starting in January, I'll be doing a study that looks at international data on adult competencies and how the attributes of individuals are related to measures of their adult skills in international and comparative perspective. So I guess that's about all I'll say about that. We don't yet have the benefit today of Professor Carolyn Reel, who is also one of our core faculty members, who historically has been interested in the sociology of organizations and organizational design of schools, in particular, organizing schools for diversity and equity. She began her career sharing an interest in the sociology of education and the study of educational leadership and administration. And her interests include how data are used in schools, cross-sector collaborations that involve school districts and community partners, and the management of instruction, how education policy shapes instruction within classrooms. You'll note in the bottom right corner that Professor Reel is retiring at the end of the spring 2025 semester. So she will not regrettably be part of our faculty next year, but she's been a critical part of our faculty for many, many years. And her time has been split between the education policy program and the sociology and education program. We don't have the benefit today of Aidan Hill, who is the interim program manager for the program. He's the program's lead administrator, and you'll see the set of responsibilities that he has. If you have logistical questions, you can reach out to Aidan, and he'll be happy to respond to them. And if he doesn't know the answer, he'll know where to go to find the answer. Aidan will be serving in this role for another month or two, and he'll be succeeded by Catherine Chung, who is currently on a leave of absence. and will be returning to the role. And Aidan shares responsibility both for the Sociology and Education program and the Economics in Education program. This next slide shows a range of TC resources. By the way, I hope I'm recording this, unless I totally screwed up, and David Estrella, the admissions director, will hate me, but I think I'm recording this, which means that all these addresses and links will be available in a couple days when the video is uploaded as part of our admissions website. But TC is a full service institution. We've got close to 5,000 students, 150 tenure track faculty, about 220 full-time faculty overall, and lots of services to help students make their way and progress towards degrees. But the most important thing I've been looking forward to all through this, and I hope you are too, is an opportunity to hear from some of our current students who are able to talk much more authoritatively and tell you the truth in ways that, I'm not lying to you, but Sam, Emily, Sean, and Anurag can tell you things that I can't tell you about what it has been like to be a student at TC, various aspects of their experience. We're going to invite each of them to say a bit and talk for a few minutes. We suggested that they start by mentioning one piece of wisdom that they wish they had known at the point that they began their program. But beyond that, the floor is theirs, and they'll have a chance to say whatever they wish about their experiences here at TC. And if it's okay, I'll invite Sam to go first, since her name is first on this slide.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Sam. I was once in your position attending this seminar 2 years ago, and coming to TC was one of the best decisions that I have ever made. I feel like I've grown astronomically. And the one piece of advice that I actually learned from this little info seminar was to join FPI with Dr. Kagan. And I highly, highly recommend that you join. It is one of the most interesting courses I've ever taken, and being in DC and getting to see what the policy world is like on the ground was extremely fascinating. But I also want to share some information about the fellowship opportunities. I've gained a lot of really awesome experience through the Teachers College fellowship opportunities. So yeah, I'm very happy here, and I think you guys will be too. It's been a great learning experience. I highly recommend Dr. Eleni Natsiopoulou. Her classes are phenomenal, along with Dr. Paula's and Dr. Nelson. But if you have any questions, feel free to look me up on LinkedIn or shoot me a message, and I can provide you with my email. Thanks.
Thanks. I'll invite Emily to say a bit.
Yeah, it's really nice to meet you all. And one piece of advice I think I wish I had received when I started at Teachers College, and I started at Teachers College a few months ago. I'm a first year master's student. And so one piece of advice is just to really take full advantage of all the wonderful opportunities and resources and connections available here. I've learned that stepping out of my comfort zone, whether it's speaking up in class or reaching out to students who have been in my shoes, has been invaluable, and it has made my experience more rewarding and enriching. And I've just also want to say that I've really enjoyed my first few months here at Teachers College in the Education and Sociology department, because I really do think that they offer a really well-rounded understanding of how social structures impact educational systems. I've gotten to take this year at least some awesome classes with Professor Reddy, who's in the Education Policy Department, on data analysis, as well as with Professor Lore on qualitative analysis. And I really feel ready to, like, even just as like a first year student, really feel ready and prepared to continue more work and understanding how, social structures are impacting education as we know it. And the professors are incredible. And not only are they just great educators, but they're leaders in their respective fields and in policy making. And that's what's made this experience so rewarding. So, yeah, that's just a little bit about me. And just like Sam said, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or shoot me a message. I'm always open to talk to anyone, even if you have any questions about how it's been going, and even questions about classes and etc. So, yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thanks, Emily. Let me invite Sean to say a bit.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sean Saunders. I am a second year EDM student in social ed, and it has been an amazing time. Uh, I'm also currently in the master's thesis program, or the master's integrated project. So I'm in the throes of doing some of my own research, which is really cool and terrifying, but mostly cool. And my piece of advice, I think, kind of piggybacking off of what Emily named around resources, like really getting to know, like, not like both the technological resources you have as well as the people resources. Like, we have access to really great online libraries, which are really, really helpful for research, but we also have access to Columbia's online databases. And like the combination of those two things just gives you such a large like access to like various kinds of resources, particularly the Columbia proper Clio kind of system gives you a really wide variety of articles and access that like even expand outside of kind of like social beyond like just the education sphere, which can be helpful as you're thinking about like maybe like cross content research. And also people resources. I have worked at two research labs on campus, one of which was a direct, like, just me talking to one of my professors, actually Professor Reddy, who is our one of my favorite people on campus. He teaches one of the introduction to quantitative methods courses. And I work with him in in a research lab, CPRE, doing mix of quantitative and qualitative research with a little bit more emphasis on the quantitative side. But again, that opportunity came just from like being in class, like answering questions and just like getting to have some one-on-one time with him and talking to him about some of my interests. So really take advantage of like the full range of resources, particularly your classmates. Like, I'm currently in the TC library, where you are anything like me, frequent, especially that first year, quite a bit. But you meet so many great people here who become really lifelong friends, but also great collaborators as you're thinking about research or thinking about things you want to do. Like, there's somebody who's probably also interested in it, you can bounce ideas off of. Particularly in my master's thesis course, that's been something that I've realized a lot, that just talking to other people about my research has made it less daunting and more exciting. So yeah, again, really tap into like all the resources, the technological ones as well as the people ones.
Thanks, Sean. Sean mentioned Doug Reddy, who's a professor in the education policy program, but is actually trained as a sociologist of education and is the director of the Consortium for Policy Research in Education, which is one of several research and development centers that are associated with the Education Policy and Social Analysis Department. The other two big ones are the Community College Research Center and the National Center for Children and Families. And it can be challenging. Sean's great in that he was able to make a connection with Professor Reddy and begin working at CPRE. But it can be challenging for master's students to get hired as research assistants, even though everyone wants to, because it's a really important part of professional development. when you get here, we'll work with you to try to figure out how best to help you be able to make those connections and to gain some research experience as part of your program. Let me invite Anurag next to say a little bit.
Hi everyone, I'm Anurag. I'm a fifth year doctoral student in the program, and it's great to be here with you all. So I second everything that everyone's been saying. One other thing that it took me a moment to kind of figure out for myself, but I wish I had maybe started with this from the beginning, was recognizing that some of the work you do in classes here can be real in a way that lives outside the classroom. And for me, I think you'll find that in many of the classes that you take, the final assignment will be something along the lines of write a paper about anything you want that in a vague way connects to the class. And that's a lot of freedom to be able to kind of tailor those assignments, which will take a lot of work and a lot of effort, to something that you care about. And for me, I think there's some straightforward connections as a doc student where a lot of the papers that I've written throughout my time in courses ended up becoming really helpful on my dissertation proposal and some of the pieces of writing that I've done since then. But even outside of that, there was one final project that I ended up working with on excellent class that is offered in the history department, which you're allowed to take classes outside of sociology too, but called Histories of Education Activism in New York City. And for that class, a few classmates and I did a project on preparing professional development for practicing New York teachers around some of those histories. And even though that was a class project as its inception, following our time in that class, the professor Ansley Erickson, who also I recommend classes by her if you get a chance to take any. She pushed us to apply for a grant, and long story short, we actually now have been in 3 iterations of offering this professional development institute to teachers over the summer. So it's been really nice to take these opportunities to do some of the work that starts in a class and potentially take it outside of there. And highly recommend that, like everyone else has been saying, talk with your professors, talk with your classmates about ways to make that happen.
Thanks, Anurag. Let's see. We've got one more slide, and that's just application deadlines. This is the dull stuff. The 3 degree programs, the MA, the EDM, and the PhD. There's a priority deadline of January 15th for the MA and the EDM. The only deadline for the PhD is December 1st. And we do not admit for the spring, but students who are admitted for next fall oftentimes can choose to start in the summer if they wish. And for all admissions related logistical stuff, David Estrella, the assistant director of admission, is the person who is knowledgeable and extremely helpful. If you were in the earlier session, you probably got a chance to hear a little bit from him. So I'm going to stop sharing now. I can. And I completely screwed this up because there's supposed to be a way to have Q&A enabled, but no one has posed any questions. So the floor is open. If you have questions, either put them in the chat or if you want to raise your hand, I can sort of invite you to say a little bit. This makes me worry I'm not doing this right. The fact that no one is responding. But if there aren't any questions, that's okay too. The good thing is that we're all accessible. Professor Lohr, Anurag, Sean, Emily, Sam, and I are all easily accessed. Our information is on the department and program website. So if you do have questions after the session, it should be quite easy to be able to get in touch with us, and we'll answer them as best we can. Well, as a teacher, you're taught to allow a slight uncomfortable pause before moving on, but it sounds like it might be the time to move on. So if there aren't any burning questions at this point, I want to thank Anurag, Sean, Emily, Sam for joining us. Thank all of you for coming and listening to us talk a little bit about the the nature of our programs. There is a question about, I do actually see a question now about funding for doctoral students. We only admit doctoral students who we can fund for 3 years at least, with a full stipend and tuition. The stipend currently is $30,000 a year. So the minimum range for the package is $30,000 stipend plus tuition for 3 years, with the opportunity to work on top of that because the stipend does not have any work obligations. Typically, our program admits 1 to 2 PhD students per year. It's pretty small. Anurag, who else was in your cohort? I can't remember.
I came in with Jose.
Oh, Jose. Okay, so just the 2 of them. There is not a formal interview for PhD applicants, but what will happen is at the point that we receive applications, the program faculty read through all the elements of the application and decide if there are some prospects who we think are people we want to talk a little bit more to. And so we will then reach out to them and have a conversation. The criteria that we rely on most heavily, I think, in deciding who we might want to talk to for doctoral applicants is a background in and commitment to research and interests that are aligned with the program faculty. There are times where we get terrific applicants whose interests are just so far removed from the program faculty that they're really not a good fit for the program. Doesn't mean they're not great students. It's just they're not a great fit for the program. Other times, we have great doctoral students, so we're very happy to have the opportunity to talk with people once we've had a chance to take a look at their applications. So we've got all of the students' emails in the chat, and if there's nothing else, I think we'll call it an evening. And thank you all very much.